Welcome. It is so very good of you to be here, and we are truly grateful you have chosen to spend a little of your time with us. One hopes you have found a comfortable place, perhaps with a soft blanket and a warm drink, for the journey we are about to share is a quiet one, meant not for grand adventure, but for gentle respite. This story was made with a simple, kind purpose in mind, to be a soft and steady hand to hold as you let the day fall away, a quiet lullaby to help ease the path toward peaceful sleep. Think of these words as a gentle flowing stream meant to carry away the sharp edges and loud noises of the world, leaving only a sense of deep, unhurried calm. There is no need to hold on too tightly to the details. Simply allow the feeling of the tale to wash over you, like the warmth of a hearth fire on a cool evening. And if this quiet time we share brings you comfort, you might perhaps consider letting us know with a simple like and joining us for future stories by subscribing to our little corner of the world. It is always a joy to welcome a new friend. Now, let us begin. Chapter 1. The First Thread of Silence. It is a curious thing, is it not, how a place can feel not merely empty of noise, but full of quiet. Soren had traveled a long and weary way, and the dust of the journey felt settled not just upon their cloak, but deep within their spirit. The clamor of bustling towns and the rumble of carriage wheels seemed to echo still in the hollows of their mind, a persistent, rattling hum. But here, at the threshold of the valley, that hum began to fade, not vanquished by a greater sound, but gently absorbed by something far more profound, a silence that had weight and texture, a presence all its own. One final step, over a line of smooth gray stones that seemed to mark a border between one world and another, and the air changed completely. It was as if Soren had passed through a curtain woven from mist and soft light, a curtain that gently muffled the world they had just left behind. Before them, the Looming Glade unfolded, not with dramatic vistas, but with a soft and humble beauty. It was a shallow basin of land, cradled by low, rolling hills, and everything within it was bathed in a soft, diffused glow, the color of a pearl seen through water. There was no direct sun here, only this constant, peaceful luminescence that seemed to rise from the very ground itself. And oh, the ground. Soren looked down, expecting soil and fallen leaves, but found instead a seamless carpet of the deepest, softest green. It was not grass, nor was it truly moss, but something else entirely. It looked for all the world like the plushest, most expertly woven wool, rising and falling in gentle swells across the valley floor. Hesitantly, Soren took a step, and then another, the surface yielding with a soft springiness that seemed to welcome the weight of a tired traveler. With each step, it felt as though a little more of their weariness was being drawn out and away into the earth. The flora of the glade was just as wondrous. Trees rose not with rough wooden bark, but with trunks that appeared to be spun from countless threads of pewter, celadon, and soft brown, woven into intricate spiraling patterns. Their leaves were not individual things, but broad swathes of a fine, shimmering textile that shifted not in a breeze, for there was none, but with a slow, internal rhythm of their own. Everything here, from the smallest bud to the tallest canopy, seemed to be part of one great silent tapestry, a single, continuous creation of some impossibly gentle and patient artisan. Following a path that was merely a slightly more compressed weave in the ground carpet, Soren ambled deeper into the heart of the glade. The air grew thicker, warmer, scented with the clean aroma of damp earth and something akin to blooming jasmine after a cool, cleansing rain. It was a fragrance that spoke of deep, quiet life, of things growing and thriving in perfect, unhurried peace. The feeling of being watched was absent. Instead, there was a profound sense of being held, of being safely contained within this gentle space. Nestled amongst a copse of silver-threaded trees, Soren found it, a small cottage, so perfectly a part of its surroundings that it seemed to have been woven there too. Its walls were made of the same compacted fibrous material as the ground, and its roof was a gentle curve of the same leafy textile that graced the trees. Smoke, or what looked like smoke, a soft pearlescent vapor, curled from a round stone chimney, carrying not the scent of burning wood, but the comforting aroma of warm herbs and baking bread. It was a scent that promised sanctuary and simple comfort. The cottage's door, a single smooth plank of pale silvery wood, was ajar. It was not an oversight, but a clear, quiet invitation. Peeking inside was like looking into a warm, cozy burrow. A single round room was lit by the soft, pulsing light of several large bulbous plants resting in clay pots, their glow casting no harsh shadows, only gentle swimming pools of warmth. A simple bed with a thick, woolen-looking quilt, a sturdy table, and 2 chairs carved from a single piece of smooth, worn stone were the only furnishings. A small hearth fire crackled without sound, its flames a soft, slow dance of pale orange and violet light. Soren stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind them with a soft padded click, not locking them in, but cradling them within the cottage's profound and welcoming peace. They drew a long, slow breath, and for the first time in a very long time, it did not feel shallow or strained. It felt full and easy and right. Here, in the quiet, it felt as though everything, especially a tired and hopeful heart, had finally found its proper place. The hum in their mind was gone, replaced by the deep, resonant thrum of the glade itself, a vibration felt more in the bones than in the ears, a lullaby from the earth. Chapter 2. The Weaver's Cottage. The first morning in the glade arrived not with a sudden sunrise, but with a slow, gentle brightening of the ambient light, as if someone had gradually turned up the wick on a very large, very soft lamp. Soren awoke from a sleep deeper than any they could recall, feeling not groggy, but simply settled, like a stone resting on the bottom of a clear, still pool. The quilt upon them was impossibly soft, woven from threads that seemed to hold a hint of warmth from the silent hearth fire across the room. For a long while they simply lay there, watching the soft light from the glow bulbs pulse in a slow hypnotic rhythm, their gentle luminescence seeming to breathe in time with Soren's own contented sighs. Rising from the bed, Soren padded across the springy floor to the cottage's single large window. The view was of the glade, of course, but now, in the fullness of its daylight, they could see so much more. They could see the threads, shimmering almost imperceptible filaments of light, finer than any spider's silk, drifted in the thick, quiet air. Soren watched, utterly mesmerized, as these threads would occasionally be drawn, as if by a gentle, invisible inhalation, into the leaves and stems of the woven flora. It was a slow, constant, and graceful dance, the air providing the raw material for the garden's very existence. It was then that Soren noticed they were not entirely alone. Standing amongst a patch of what looked like tall woven reeds was a figure. It was an old man, tall and slender, with a kind and weathered face and hair the color of the pale, silvery wood of the cottage door. He was not using a scythe or a spade. His hands were empty. He simply stood with his palms held out, his fingers moving in slow, deliberate, almost balletic gestures. As he moved, the shimmering threads in the air around him would respond, weaving themselves into the reeds, mending a sparse patch here, encouraging a new spiral of growth there. He was tending the garden, not with tools, but with tranquility itself. Later that morning, as Soren sat in one of the smooth stone-worn chairs by the now open door, the old man approached. He moved with an unhurried grace that made no sound upon the woven earth, and he smiled a gentle, welcoming smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. He carried 2 steaming ceramic mugs. Without a word, he offered one to Soren, who accepted it with a grateful nod. The old man sat in the other chair, and a comfortable silence settled between them, as natural and easy as the quiet of the glade itself. The man Soren would learn was named Kalen, and his presence felt as ancient and as peaceful as the valley. Soren took a sip from the mug. The brew was warm and deeply comforting, a flavor they couldn't quite place. It was herbaceous, certainly, but with an underlying taste reminiscent of freshly baked bread and a hint of something sweet, like honeyed nuts. The warmth did not just fill their stomach. It seemed to spread out through their veins, a gentle, liquid peace that unloosened knots in their shoulders and back they hadn't even known were there. They felt their whole body soften, sinking a little deeper into the solid comfort of the stone chair. Kalen, noticing Soren's appreciative expression, simply gestured with his mug toward a small silvery green plant growing by the cottage door. It was woven sage, he explained, though not with words. His meaning was conveyed through a simple, kind look and a gentle inclination of his head, a form of communication that felt perfectly at home here. The silent conversation was surprisingly easy, a shared understanding that passed between them without the need for clumsy sound. Soren understood that the tea was a gift from the glade itself, a distillation of its welcoming spirit. For the rest of the day, Soren simply sat and observed, a willing student of stillness. They watched Kalen as he moved through his chores, his thread tending a form of meditative, moving art. He never hurried, never forced. He simply guided, invited, and participated in the glade's slow, continuous act of creation. And as they watched, Soren felt the frantic, hurried rhythms that had governed their own life for so long begin to slow, to untangle, to finally fall into step with the gentle 1-2 beat of the pulsing glow bulbs and the steady, quiet work of the weaver in his garden. As the glade's light began to soften once more into its version of dusk, Kalen returned to the cottage and gently stoked the silent hearth. The flames, soft and purple tinged, danced with renewed life, casting a warm and gentle glow upon the room. He gave Soren a simple, reassuring nod, as if to say, "All is well. Rest now." And Soren did, curling up once more under the soft quilt, the comforting scent of woven sage still lingering in the air, their mind blessedly, wonderfully empty of all but the peaceful, rhythmic hum of the living garden around them. Chapter 3. Learning the Loom of Being. The days that followed settled into a rhythm as soft and predictable as the pulsing of the glow bulbs. There was no grand curriculum, no formal lessons in the ways of the glade. Kalen's teachings were a thing of quiet demonstration, of shared, peaceful moments. He would gently beckon Soren to join him on his slow, ambling walks, and Soren, a willing apprentice, would follow, their senses wide open, learning the language of this place, not through the ears, but through the skin, the eyes, the very bones. One morning, Kalen led Soren to a wall of what looked like lichen, a thick velvety patch of deep gray-green clinging to a low stone outcrop. He placed his palm flat against it, closing his eyes, and with a gentle nod, invited Soren to do the same. Hesitantly, Soren rested their hand beside his. There was no sound, not in the way one usually understands it, but Soren felt it instantly. A low, resonant hum, a vibration that traveled up their arm and settled deep in their chest. It was the hum they had felt since their arrival, but here, at its source, it was a tangible, grounding force. This, Kalen conveyed with a peaceful smile. Still lichen, grown from the ancient, deep quiet of the stones themselves. Another time, he guided Soren's hand toward a trailing vine that hung from the boughs of a woven tree. Its tendrils, spun from threads of near invisibility, danced in the air. As Soren's fingers brushed against them, they felt not a texture, but a sensation like the softest, smoothest silk being drawn across their skin. It was a rustle made of feeling, not sound. These were the whisper vines, Kalen's gentle gaze explained, woven from the silence of a held breath, from moments of quiet anticipation. Soren spent an entire afternoon just standing there, letting the vines drift across their face and hands, a silent symphony of touch. Kalen began to show Soren the art of thread tending. It was not something one could force. He demonstrated how to stand perfectly still, to quieten one's own mind until it was a smooth, untroubled surface. Only then, he showed, could one begin to feel the different textures of quietude in the air. He guided Soren's hands, showing them how to cup their palms and feel the cool, silken strands of nighttime silence that lingered in the shady places, or the fine, downy threads of foggy morning quiet that felt like softest lamb's wool. At first, Soren felt nothing but the still, warm air. Their mind, though calmer than it had been in years, still chattered with the habit of thought. But Kalen was patient. He would simply sit nearby, his own hands moving in their slow, graceful dance, his serenity a silent encouragement. So Soren persisted, day after day, finding a comfortable spot on the woven ground, closing their eyes and just breathing. They focused on the feeling of the soft earth beneath them, the gentle warmth of the air, the distant, thrumming hum of the still lichen. And then one afternoon it happened. As they sat with their eyes closed, their mind adrift in a sea of calm. They felt it, a single, delicate thread, cool and smooth, drifted against their outstretched fingers. It lingered there, a distinct, tangible presence. Without thinking, Soren simply curled their fingers slightly, a gentle invitation, and felt the thread coil softly in their palm before drifting on. A small, wondrous smile touched Soren's lips. It was a start. A connection had been made. From that day on, their perception deepened. They began to not just see the shimmering threads, but to feel their different qualities. They learned to distinguish the heavy, stable threads of contented silence from the light, flighty threads of curious quiet. They would spend hours walking the winding paths, not going anywhere in particular, but simply feeling the intricate tapestry of the landscape. They would trace the woven patterns on a tree's trunk, feeling the history of the silences that had formed it, a story told in texture and form. The frantic, jagged rhythms that had once defined Soren's inner world were smoothing out, repatterning themselves to match the slow, deliberate, weaving pulse of the glade. The need to fill every moment with action or thought was simply melting away, replaced by a simple, profound joy in just being. They were not just a visitor in the garden anymore. They were becoming part of its quiet living loom, a single peaceful thread in a masterpiece of tranquility. Chapter 4. The Unspooling of the Self. There came a time when Soren no longer marked the passing of days. The gentle cycling of the glade's light from soft brightness to pearlescent dusk was the only clock, and it was a clock without urgency. The practice of calming their mind was no longer a practice. It had become their natural state. Thoughts, when they arose, were no longer a clamorous crowd demanding attention, but rather like the shimmering threads in the air. They drifted gently into view, were observed with a quiet curiosity, and then drifted away again, leaving no trace. The constant, low-level effort of being in the world had simply vanished. This newfound peace was a tangible thing. Soren could feel it in the way they breathed, a slow and easy rhythm that seemed to draw in the very quietude of the glade. They felt it in their limbs, which moved with a languid grace, free from the sharp, hurried gestures of their former life. The deep, abiding calm of the place was no longer something they were visiting. It was what they were breathing, what they were made of. The separation between self and sanctuary had dissolved, so gently they hadn't even noticed it happening. One afternoon, Kaelin led Soren toward the very center of the glade, to a place they had not yet been. Here, nestled in a perfect circle of ancient, slumbering woven trees, was a pool. It was not large, perhaps only a few paces across, and its contents did not look like water. The pool was filled with a substance that shimmered like liquid mercury, its surface a flawless, unbroken mirror that reflected the gentle, luminous canopy above. There was no ripple, no current, only a profound and absolute stillness. Kaelin knelt at the edge of the pool. He dipped his cupped hands into the silvery liquid, and when he drew them out, they were not wet. The liquid simply clung to his skin for a moment, a shimmering glove of pure light, before sinking in and disappearing. He looked at Soren, his eyes full of a deep, peaceful wisdom, and gestured for them to do the same. There was no hesitation in Soren's heart. They knelt on the soft woven earth at the pool's edge, the air around them humming with an even deeper quiet than they had ever felt before. Taking a slow breath, Soran dipped their hands into the pool. The sensation was extraordinary. It was not wetness, nor was it truly cold or warm. It was simply the feeling of stillness. The liquid was heavy, dense, and as it enveloped their hands, a feeling of the most complete and perfect tranquility imaginable washed through them. It was as if every last vestige of inner noise, every ghost of an old worry, every tightly wound knot of forgotten tension was being gently drawn out, absorbed into the liquid stillness. Soren felt this peace travel up their arms, spreading through their shoulders, down their spine, and into every part of their being. It was a gentle unmaking, an unspooling of the tightly wound self they had been. Their mind became a vast empty sky, clear and blue and endless. The weight of memory, the faint pull of the future, it all dissolved into this perfect, absolute present. They felt weightless, untethered, and yet more grounded and whole than ever before. It was the feeling of a long, slow, final exhalation. They withdrew their hands, watching the last of the shimmering liquid sink into their skin, leaving it feeling soft and new. They looked at their reflection in the pool's perfect surface, but the face that looked back seemed distant, unimportant. What mattered was the feeling, this profound sense of inner space, of a garden of quietude now blooming within them. They had come to the glade seeking a place of peace, and had found that the place was not a location on a map, but a state of being they could now access within themselves. Zhang. For a long time, Soran and Kaelin simply sat there by the pool of liquid stillness, side by side in a silence that was deeper and more eloquent than any words could ever be. It was a shared communion, an understanding that needed no expression. The glade had offered its greatest gift. Not just a temporary respite, but the quiet certainty that peace, once truly found, could never truly be lost again. It had been woven into the very fabric of their spirit. Chapter 5. A Garden Carried Within. The morning Soran awoke with the gentle certainty that it was time to leave was no different from any other. The light filtered in with the same soft grace. The glow bulbs pulsed with their steady, sleepy rhythm, and the air was thick with the clean scent of the woven earth. Yet something within Soren felt different, not with a sense of urgency, but of completion. The frayed edges of their spirit, which had felt so thin and worn upon their arrival, had not just been patched, but carefully, lovingly, rewoven into a whole cloth of deep and resilient calm. The work was done. They rose and dressed in the slow, deliberate way that had become their habit, their movements a quiet echo of Kaelin's own peaceful grace. The noise of the world they had left behind was now just a distant memory, like a story read long ago, its sharp edges softened by time and its emotional weight lifted. It held no power over them now, no threat to the profound stillness that had taken root in their soul. They were ready. When they stepped out of the cottage, Kaelin was waiting, as if he had known. He held 2 steaming mugs of the familiar woven sage tea, and he offered one to Soren with his usual gentle smile. They sat together in the 2 stone chairs, a comfortable and easy silence stretching between them. It was not the silence of strangers with nothing to say, but the rich, full silence of old friends who understood each other perfectly without the need for sound. They sipped their tea, watching the faint, shimmering threads of quiet dance in the air, a silent toast to the beauty of the morning. As Soren finished the last warm sip, they stood, and Kaelin stood with them. There were no grand farewells, no promises to return. Such things were not needed here. Kaelin simply placed a kind hand on Soran's shoulder for a moment, a gesture that conveyed all the warmth, blessing, and gentle affection in the world. In that touch, Soran felt a deep and abiding gratitude for this place, and for the quiet tender who kept it. As they turned to leave, Soran happened to glance down at the cuff of their sleeve, and there they saw it, a single shimmering thread, the very same kind that drifted in the glade's air, had woven itself into the fabric of their tunic. It was a filament of the purest, most peaceful quiet, a tiny, luminous piece of the glade itself, a parting gift. Soran smiled, a soft, genuine smile of pure contentment. It was a quiet reminder, a physical anchor to the peace they had found here. They walked the familiar path back toward the edge of the valley, their steps making no sound on the springy, woven ground. They did not look back. There was no sense of loss, no sorrow in the leaving. The Looming Glade was not a place they were abandoning, because its truest nature was now a part of them. They carried its stillness in their bones, its gentle light behind their eyes, and its quietude in the calm and steady beat of their own heart. Reaching the line of smooth gray stones that marked the border, Soren paused and took one last deep breath of the glade's thick, peaceful air. Then, with a feeling not of ending, but of new and gentle beginning, they stepped across. The world beyond did not greet them with a sudden crash of noise, but with the soft rustle of ordinary leaves and the distant, gentle song of a bird. These sounds were no longer an intrusion, but were now just another part of a much larger, more peaceful tapestry. Soren smiled, touched the little thread on their cuff, and began the slow journey home, carrying a quiet, wondrous garden within.